Hello, and welcome back to another Chris McPherson Show Daily Dose, and it's time to bring a close to the Formula One season recap and revisit it all. Of course, if you're joining us for the first time or you haven't before, make sure to hit subscribe down below and hit that bell notification as well. Get involved in the comments, give the video a like, all of those sorts of things that help us grow our footprint. As I said off the top, we're here to recap Formula One in the rear view of a 2025 season, including the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And when we talk Formula One, we welcome in one man and one man only. That is JR Carter. JR, good to talk to you again this week.
Hey, Chris.
It probably would have been a little better if we had an Aussie win to finish the season, but let's talk the race first. And Max Verstappen did it from the start. He led most of the race in the end, sharing some of that with our own Oscar Piastri, but he got the win. He was too strong here again, and he's absolutely finished the season with a flurry, which has got to be a warning sign to people for 2026.
It does, although because of the change in engine provider for them next year, maybe not. We just don't know what the Ford engine's going to do. But Max just was capping off an amazing comeback of the season, where for him to sort of close the gap to 2 points with one race remain, in the final race. That's a sensational comeback from being over 100 points back a few months ago. Like you said, Max sort of just led from the very beginning. He didn't back the pack up like a lot of the pundits were expecting him to, and just ran his race as he saw fit. It played into Oscar's hands as well, because Lando Norris had a Lando Norris bottling start. It does still boggle the mind that he's now the world champion with sort of driving like that. But yeah, Oscar zipped straight in second place as soon as he could, and then it stayed that way realistically for the entire race.
Yeah, you almost want Lando Norris to start one spot in front of you on the grid, don't you? It's like a gift without having to qualify for it. But on that note, obviously, as you touched on, due credit where it's due, irrespective of all of our aspersions we may have cast previously. Lando has won the title. Interestingly enough, we see a title where he won 7 races, Oscar won 7 races, and Max won 8. But his consistency over the season in getting podiums with regularity is where he exceeded the other 2 drivers, even when you allow that he had a race scratch from those results when we talk about it, which was obviously that plank incident.
That's right. He has showed a large amount of consistency throughout the year. There's we as Australians all know there's a major asterisk over this win at this point, where his team really backed him, despite the fact the other driver in his team led the Formula One championship for, 15 rounds, and never received the sort of support that Lando had from the team.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I mean we could split hairs till the cows come home, but like Max previously, there will always be a consternation and a question mark for many on this. I'm sure for a lot of European and British fans and legacy McLaren fans that have ridden the waves with Lando to this point, they will undoubtedly say that he is the deserved winner and the numbers don't lie. So he's the one that's got the championship now. McLaren have got the Constructors' Championship. A pretty positive year, but not everything that went so well. And Zach Brown probably hasn't covered himself in glory to finish the season, it's fair to say, when in an attempt to engage with a clearly somewhat down, depressed, dejected, I think maybe might be a good word for it, Oscar Piastri, he was very congratulatory, talking about what a wonderful season they've all had, very ignorant of the fact that his driver, one of his 2 drivers that he said, isn't a number 1, isn't a number 2, actions might say otherwise, was clearly in a spot where congratulations was not what he wanted. He just wanted a moment of reflection and to just probably dwell in his own misery for a little bit.
Look, the fact that Zach's words notwithstanding, Zach's timing was the worst thing, because Oscar and his engineer were clearly having their own conversation, in a conversation that the 2 of them were engaged in, and Zach just burst in, tried to throw energy at them. Zach would have heard that conversation on the radio. He didn't bump in blindly, like the way those duplex radio systems work. He bumped in deliberately at that point.
It was the stereotypical, when you're traveling, American tourist. That's what it gave me vibes of.
He's the bloke in Bruges that's going to go up the tower.
Exactly right. So anyway, I think it's been described as a tone-deaf and horrible moment across the press, and you couldn't really sum it up much more than that. There was plenty of interesting interactions at the finish as well, not just that one. We saw the interesting interaction when Max and Oscar were having a nice casual chat on the couch, like old mates from way back, and then Lando walked in, and all of a sudden the room got very weird and tense.
Yeah, like I won't lie. At that point, I'd switched off. Like as much as I wanted to sort of see the cool down and like see how Max responded, and Max responded like incredibly gracefully. Like thanked his team, thanked the engine provider. Like just like was the people's champion for one last time there. But yeah, like the insufferableness that we're going to see over the next couple of months between Lando Norris and Zach Brown, that driver's cooldown room was a preview of things to come, of like how they're going to be received.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's an interesting one, but that's the I guess the moves and shakes of a world where, you know, there's a lot of personalities as we've got to know more and more as we get more exposure to it. And I know that you'll cringe at these three words through things like Drive to Survive, etc., so that other people can see what those train spotters of us that watch so much more of this do see. Speaking of train spotters, you don't have to be a train spotter to know that Yuki Tsunoda's first language is not English. We saw the incident last year in Qatar where he thought, when his team told him there's a mirror on the track, he got confused because he's wondering why there was beavers in the Qatar desert. But now he's got it a little bit caught up rather than words to words, but words to actions. When his team he gave him some instructions, and he basically told them, I know what to do in terms of helping out his teammate, which his actions clearly showed he might know what to do, but he isn't able to necessarily execute it.
Look, I'm not sure he actually even knew what to do, in all honesty. Like we've seen 4 years ago, Checo Perez like do a masterclass in holding another driver up as legally as possible. Like Checo didn't put a foot wrong, and he was defending against Lewis Hamilton, who was in a generational Mercedes car at that point. Yuki had to defend against Lando Norris, and he lasted half a track and received a 5-second penalty for his actions in doing so. Like, there's a reason Yuki doesn't have a seat next year. There's a reason Honda appears to have abandoned Yuki and all, because if he's staying in the Red Bull camp, Honda aren't backing him anymore. So just Yuki had no place being there, in all honesty.
Yeah, I feel like that's Yuki sometimes. He just seems that little awkward guy. It's like someone's brought their little brother to work, right?
He's everyone's tiny little mate. Like at one point, like the Toro Rosso guys had the shortest combination of all time. But yeah, look, Yuki should never have been put in that car at all. Liam Lawson should never have been in that car either. But there had to have been a better answer, and ideally next year we have that better answer.
Well, that is exactly right. We do talk about the changes in the teams, and we might get to that in a moment. We might just recap a few other pieces out of the 2025 season, and I guess the season that was, before we start looking ahead to the expanded grid and what is 2026. And in terms of that, I think, you know, some really positive young drivers coming on the scene. We've talked about Kimi Antonelli showing some really good signs, but Ollie Bierman as well in a what's fair to say is a lesser car in the Haas. Those two for mine are probably, you know, maybe not by definition that for Antonelli, but, you know, they're the rookies that have been the shining lights for season 2025.
Yeah, those two, along with Isaac Hadjar. Like, Isaac Hadjar had the absolute disaster of a start of the season in Melbourne, and he's just gone from strength to strength all year, resulting in, like, what's going to occur next year for him. But Kimi Antonelli, definitely driver of the future. As for...
Ollie Bierman?
As for Ollie Bierman, look, he's in a terrible car at the moment. They might do some stuff next year, like depending on how the Ferrari package goes. But Bierman's like, the other thing is Bierman's like also on a trajectory that's probably going to involve a Ferrari seat at some point. So whether that's good for his career or bad, like it's flip of the coin at this stage, really, the way Ferrari's going.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot of things, and we'll talk about the new cars, and we know that will all of a sudden, you know, some teams will emerge, some teams will slide back, depending on who can get the jump. And I heard some interesting theories, speaking of Ferrari. I'm not sure if it was you that was sharing it with me or that I sent it over to you, but basically that, you know, Ferrari are trying to throw off so they get more wind tunnel time next year. So anyway, I don't think that's happening. And yeah, obviously on that note, the Constructors' Championship did finish up, you know, in a fairly predictable order in terms of, you know, McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, Williams in fifth. The RB team then in sixth, just in front of Aston Martin, which was a good result for them from the weekend. And then Haas, Sauber, and no surprises, Alpine in last. And it's probably where I want to go to next, JR. Alpine, we had another Aussie on the grid at the start of the year. We were very excited about having two Aussies on the grid. We had a genuine contender and a new emerging name, speaking of young guys, and obviously a name that's a legacy motorsport name in Jack Doohan. But Jack was basically hung out to dry before, his time, and we knew that he was on a short leash when he first started. To be replaced with this, superstar, that was going to go and turn the tide for Alpine and win them some points. I don't think they thought they were going to win races. But Franco Colapinto had more races, but got exactly the same number of points as Jack Doohan. So it makes you question, did that really work?
Yeah, so it's obviously a money thing, as to why Franco got that sort of seat in the end. The other thing is the Alpine is an absolute tractor. It was the worst car on the grid all year by far. The fact that Franco didn't get points in it is probably just testament to how badly prepared the car actually was. But that said, though, it does leave the question, why swap the drivers at all? I'm guessing, with their original language, they were planning on putting another driver in after Silverstone, and I think those plans just fizzled out because no one wanted to sit in that seat at that stage. So realistically, Alpine have created this situation for themselves. Renault now exit as a constructor, where the Alpine team will remain, but they'll be powered by Mercedes units, I believe. End of a sort of generation, it's just fizzled out, really. Ever since they became Alpine, that team has been on the down.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't done the maths. I'm just having a look here, but I think even average finishing position across his races, while he had 2 retirements, Jack Doohan in his 6, his average finishing position, it was around about 14th, which I don't think, if you do the maths, considering Franco Colapinto finished last or second last, I think in 4 or 5 races across his run, including one DNS. Pierre Gasly in a similar car, got 1 points finish in the time that Doohan was there out of 6 races, so one v none in 6. Then you have a look at the remaining 20 races, and I think by my quick maths, I think he got 4 or 5. So he's picked up and he's getting it every 4th or 5th race. And again, still, I think an 11th place finish was the best that Franco Colapinto did in a Netherlands Grand Prix. So, yeah, interesting to see. But he's got a contract for another year. Whether we'll see Jack Doohan pop up somewhere else, I'm not too sure. But I think, while we're giving the ups to those 3 young drivers before, Franco Colapinto is probably the one. I guess alongside some other names where, probably disappointed in the overall package performance, which most notably would probably be the man that finished 6th in the championship in Lewis Hamilton.
That's right. Lewis Hamilton's just had a disastrous year, effectively. All the hope and promise of him going to Ferrari, for him to be sort of not welcomed by the team, with open arms, I've spoken about this a couple of times, where the team just refuses to listen to Lewis Hamilton as if he's just some random off the street. He's a 7-time world champion. He knows what he's talking about, and they just will not listen to a word the bloke says. That's it. They don't listen to Charles Leclerc either. So it's just what Ferrari does. Ferrari does what they choose to do.
Yeah, so I'd make some comment about ignorant Italians, but I might get shot down in the comments in F1. But so that kind of closes out 2025. We head with an eye to 2026 now. And obviously the biggest of talking points is, first of all, a new team coming in, the new regs as well alongside that. So we will see the Cadillac team come in. But interestingly, a very consolidated driving grid at this stage, with just the one real move, as you touched on. Yuki Tsunoda will move out. Isaac Hadjar will move from the RB team up to Red Bull. And Arvid Lindblad will come from Formula 2 into that other seat alongside Liam Lawson.
That's right. So Lindblad, sort of the new rising star among the Red Bull ranks. Isaac Hadjar, definitely deserving of the Red Bull seat. The question is, will he then suffer the same curse that has happened to every second driver or every teammate to Max Verstappen over the last 10 years now? Will he last a season, or will he keep that car next to Max at any point? I actually genuinely think he's the best hope in all this in a long time. Daniel Ricciardo was the last person to really perform the same way Max does in the car. Obviously, Danny was sort of towards the end of his sort of functional career at that point, but he was able to get results out of that car at the same time Max was getting results out of that car. We need to see that from Isaac, because what Max really suffered from, and Lando Norris sort of tried to turn this around and be like, oh, this is why I'm having a harder time than Max. Max needs a teammate that's sort of up there with him. He can't have a situation where they had to run Yuki on hard tires and run him long in the hopes that the pit stop will occur and him hold up the other team. They need whoever that teammate is to be next to Max the whole time and be his actual wingman.
Yeah, well, time will tell. Can Isaac Hadjar be that driver? We'll know early in the new season. Again, it might come down to the wheels underneath him and the engine in front of him. Interestingly, we see some people, and I absolutely left him alone when we did drive-bys on people who underperform, because I think, to be fair, with the amount of points finishes he got, he actually surprised me. People like Lance Stroll still have a job next year.
Lance Stroll still has a job next year, but like, surely this is it. Like, Adrian Newey has designed a car, which means that car is most likely going to be very competitive. It needs to have a competitive driver. Now, like, let's caveat, think about like the fact that if Lance gets results in this car, how good that car actually is as well. Like, because if Lance is getting results, Alonso must be winning the championship is what's going to happen.
Yeah, well, you would certainly think that would be the case if Fernando Alonso might be back on a podium if Lance Stroll's competitive in a car consistently. So I'm intrigued to know what the that combo is of Adrian Newey and Fernando Alonso, because, again, remembering this is a driver who has 425 race starts now, which is just absolutely phenomenal. Lewis Hamilton, if he gets through the full season next year, will become the second driver to hit 400 starts. There's no one else on the grid in the top 5. Sergio Perez is next best. He'll rack up a 300 next year, driving for the Cadillac team. So quite phenomenal. But the interesting thing, we talk about Fernando being old, JR. He's still going to be about 7 years short of the top 10 of oldest drivers to compete in an F1 Grand Prix.
Really? So I would have thought he would have been sort of in the sort of top 3 of that, but apparently not. Although when you think about like the racing in sort of the early days,
it's all
of
the
Formula
1950s. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's right. It's like in the NRL, like where you've got teams like the Rabbitohs like winning, or the Dragons winning like multiple premierships in a row.
Exactly right. And then we'll see Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz continue to go head-to-head on their continuous streak. This blew me away when I saw this, and I was looking through some stats ahead of 2026. Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen started in the same race. They've both competed for 233 consecutive Grand Prix since the 2015 Australian Grand Prix. So it'll be a 12th season they're going into. Lewis Hamilton, the longest streak at the moment, 265. Sebastian Vettel and Rubens Barrichello in front of them. So Alonso on a 219 race streak previously, but not on that at the moment. So some interesting numbers there. Again, absolutely train spotting stuff for me, but just love watching and seeing some of these guys that have put up the careers they have. And as we said, Alonso keeps on going. He'll be 45 mid next season, which, putting himself through what he does every year, is absolutely phenomenal at that age.
It is, and he's sort of gone on record already, sort of about what his plans are. Like, if he gets a competitive car next year, he's not going anywhere. He's in the sport until like he has to be peeled out of the car. If the car's not competitive next year, I think next year will be it for him. And then look, ideally it's Lance Stroll's next year as well. Like, Lawrence Stroll, like, surely realizes like he needs to have a competitive driver. There was all those shots of Mark Webber and Adrian Newey having chats during the week. So maybe that's where Oscar's future is, because realistically after next year, Oscar cannot remain at McLaren. Like, unless Oscar wins a title McLaren next year, which I actually doubt is going to be the case because they'll back Lando from day dot while he's the incumbent. Oscar needs to move away from that absolute disaster of a team environment for him.
Yeah, I think everyone reads that writing on the wall. It seems likely that those two, this is not a long-term. It's never really been a long-term in F1, as much as teams say that they, don't have 1 and 2 drivers. 1 and 2 has been the sustained model forever and a day because people understand their roles and there's no miscommunication or deception or anything else like that. So we'll wait and see how that shapes. The other piece is obviously quite a few power unit and those sorts of structural changes for engines. You talked about some of them before. The most notable one, though, is obviously the Audi team now with Kick Sauber taking over that unit and entering as a full-time F1 side.
That's right. Although I don't believe Audi's supplying power units. I believe Ferrari will still continue to supply power units for the time being, where it's fundamentally, effectively going to be just business as usual, different badge on the side of the Sauber team. The big engine manufacturer changes for next year in terms of cars. We have Red Bull going to a Ford designed power unit. And then we also have the Aston Martins moving to a Honda designed power unit.
Yeah, so there will be some changes there. Apologies, I did misstep on that or misspeak. But obviously Audi coming in there and, pushing some more investment into the sport, Cadillac coming in as well. It'll be interesting to see whether we have that advance later on. But as you say, the Ford engine coming in there is a big change for Max and the crew there. So that'll be interesting to see. How do you see these things playing out? Obviously, you talked about Adrian Newey and him now getting his fingerprints on the Aston Martin as well. Are you expecting some reshuffles, especially sort of, in terms of these top teams, exactly where the pecking order is, and even more so in the middle to lower tiers?
Look, it's a really interesting question because like everything we've heard from pre-development testing has been that the Mercedes power unit is miles ahead of the rest. Ferrari are the ones that are lacking right now, and then the Honda and the Ford engines right now are just actual unknowns because there's no while there's some generational stuff with the Honda engine, Ford hasn't been a manufacturer in engines in Formula One for decades. So we just don't know what's going to happen there.
It'll certainly be interesting to see how it all shapes, how it all plays out. But the good news is, as we record today, it is exactly 3 months until the F1 season kicks off again. So depending on how you live your lifestyle, it's either about 90 sleeps or a few less if you party hard through the off-season, JR.
Well, that's right. And we do have testing, and I believe will be extended testing this year to look forward to because we've got new regulations coming in. Like we'll get our first look at the smaller cars and how they actually perform around a circuit. Because the other thing is what's the big thing this regulation change is sort of trying to bring about is actual racing again. Like the fact that you couldn't get multiple cars around Monaco and things like that, like where we should see some more excitement coming back into the sport.
Yeah, we're certainly excited to see some more racing. Obviously, that's what Formula One is all about, and it's what we look forward to seeing in 2026 as we hit that Formula One Championship. As we said, it all gets underway on the 8th of March. 3 races in March, 2 in April to get it all started. That Asian swing, Australia, China, Japan, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia to get us rocking and rolling. And then it all runs through again till early December. We get 9 months of it, and it'll come back to exactly where we finished with Qatar and Abu Dhabi off the back of Las Vegas on that 3-week swing. So very similar to 24 race calendar, and we can't wait for it. As always, JR, a big thanks to you for your insight. Enjoy the off-season. I'm sure we'll see you poking around with some other different sports on the Chris McPherson Show in the meantime. Mitch
Marsh will get a duck at some point, and I will appear.
Well, he's officially stopped bowling, so that's at least he won't get called back as an all-rounder. But thank you as always, mate, and I look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thanks, Chris.
And a big thank you to you for tuning in. As always, make sure you hit subscribe. Give us a follow along on social media. We're on most of your favorite social media platforms, X, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can find us all of those. Twitter is X. TikTok is the one I was looking for. But, of course, a big thank you to you for tuning in to your home of the black and white of sport. No grey opinions here. We'll see you again soon.